On May 10, 2009, Jung finally celebrated what Chinese tradition calls one of life's four great joys, the candlelit night in the bridal chamber. Like many young professionals in Xi'an where they both worked, the couple had postponed their wedding banquet until career demands eased. The choice of Shaanxi as the venue held deeper significance. While most of Zhang's childhood friends had joined the province's coal conglomerates after graduation, he and his wife had remained in Xi'an, a decision that left him isolated from the tight-knit brotherhood of his youth. The wedding became more than a ritual. It was a homecoming. Golden labels of Fenju liquor glinted beneath the banquet hall lights. This iconic Shaanxi spirit, deceptively smooth with a delayed punch, flowed freely as custom dictated. During the ceremonial toast rounds, Zhang's groomsmen discreetly swapped his liquor with water, an open secret tolerated by elders and colleagues. But when reaching the rowdy tables of his childhood comrades, the game changed. "What's in your cup? Water again," roared his friend, slamming his empty cup. 8 men who'd shared desk, carved childhood secrets now formed a wall of grinning defiance. What began as ritual transformed into a Shaanxi drinking duel. 15 bottles of 53% ABV Fenju vanished between them. Zhang alone drained to full bottles, enough to fell a draft horse. His final memory before blacking out. The elevator doors across the hall led like molten glass. Or was it the floor tilting? Someone's laughter echoed through honey thick air. When consciousness returned a few hours later, Zhang would find himself trapped in a labyrinth beyond rational comprehension. But that horror belongs to the realm of the Sevenfold nightmare. As you listen to this, I bet you can't help but think of a certain movie. If you've seen Inception, you know what I'm talking about. But for Zhang, this was not a movie. This was his reality. Or was it? When Zhang finally came to, he found himself lying in a hospital bed. The room was dimly lit, and the only sound was the beeping of the heart monitor. His wife was there, her eyes wide with relief and fear. When she saw him stir, she couldn't hold back her tears. "You're finally awake," she sobbed. "You've been unconscious for 3 days. We were so scared." Zhang's mind raced. 3 days. What had happened? His head felt like it was stuffed with cotton and his throat burned like fire. He croaked out, "What do you mean, 3 days? What happened?" His wife wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. "After you passed out from drinking, we rushed you to the hospital. Your blood pressure was almost non-existent and your pulse was barely there. The doctors said you had severe alcohol poisoning. They warned us that you might not wake up. Or if you did, you might never be the same." Zhang's heart sank. He remembered the wedding, the drinking, and then nothing. His wife continued, "Your grandparents were so worried. Your grandfather came too. But your grandmother, she had a stroke. She passed away yesterday." "What?" "No," Zhang whispered, feeling the blood drain from his face. His grandmother was gone. It was too much to take in. Just then the door to his room swung open. His mother stood there, tears streaming down her face. The moment she saw him awake, she pointed at him and shouted through her sobs, "You're such a disappointment. It's all your fault. Grandma's gone." The words hit Zhang like a ton of bricks. His heart shattered into a million pieces. He felt a wave of guilt and disbelief wash over him. How could this be happening? In a sudden burst of energy, he yanked the IV out of his arm and bolted out of the room. But as he ran down the hallway, his feet slipped on the cold tile floor. He tumbled down the stairs, landing in a crumpled heap at the bottom. Everything went black again. Suddenly, he jolted awake. The room around him was dark, the only sound the soft hum of the night. He was lying in his own bed, the familiar surroundings a stark contrast to the sterile hospital room he had just left behind. His heart raced as he sat up, gasping for breath. It was all a dream. He got up, his throat on fire, and stumbled to the kitchen to get a drink. His parents and wife were there, their faces filled with concern. His mother asked, "We were so worried about you." "Worried?" Zhang repeated, his mind still reeling. "I thought I was in the hospital. I thought ... I thought my grandmother died." His wife shook her head. "No, you just drank too much at the wedding. You've been asleep for hours. Here, drink some water." Zhang took a few sips, but his mind was racing. He looked at his phone and saw several missed calls from his company. He called back and the voice on the other end was cold and distant. "Where have you been?" the voice demanded. "We've been trying to reach you. One of our clients gave you a payment and you never reported it. We already filed a police report." Zhang's heart pounded. "No, wait, I forgot to tell you. I brought the money home. But the line went dead. His wife and parents looked at him, confusion and fear in their eyes. Just then, there was a knock on the door. When his mother opened it, two police officers stepped inside. They looked at Zhang and said, "We need you to come with us. You're suspected of embezzlement." Zhang's mind spun. This couldn't be real. But as the officers led him out, he tripped on the stairs and fell, hitting his head on the way down. Zhang's world was spinning. One moment he was sitting up in bed gasping for breath. When he came to, he was back in his bed, his head feeling like it was filled with lead. He blinked a few times trying to clear the fog from his mind. The room was quiet, but his heart was pounding in his chest. For a moment he just sat there trying to catch his breath. Then slowly the memories began to flood back. He remembered the wedding, the drinking, the series of nightmares that had left him feeling like he was losing his mind. But there was one thing he knew for sure. He had already handed the money over to the company. It was all a lie, the accusations, the police, the chaos. It was just another layer of his twisted dreams. Zhang was lying in a hospital bed, his throat on fire. He felt like he was trapped in a never-ending nightmare. His father was there, looking at him with a strange expression as if he didn't recognize his own Zhang. "Dad, I feel terrible. I need some water." Zhang croaked, his voice barely audible. But as soon as he spoke, his father's face turned red with anger. Zhang had never seen his dad so furious. He pointed at Zhang and shouted, "You're such a disappointment. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Zhang's heart raced. What was his father talking about? His dad continued, "You got drunk and pushed your wife down the stairs. She hit her head and hasn't woken up. The doctor said she might never be the same." Zhang's mind went blank. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. His wife, injured because of him? He bolted out of the room, rushing to his wife's ward. But as he ran down the stairs, he tripped and tumbled down, hitting his head on the cold, unforgiving floor. When he came to, he was back in his bed, his heart pounding in his chest. He sat up, gasping for breath. It was just another dream, but this time something felt different. He was in his bedroom and his parents were there, looking at him with a mix of concern and confusion. "Mom, Dad, how long have I been asleep?" Zhang asked, his voice trembling. "Ever since you got drunk at the wedding," his mother replied, her voice soft but filled with worrying. "You've been asleep for a whole day. Your wife went out to get some medicine for you." Zhang's mind raced. He remembered everything. His grandmother's death, the police accusing him of embezzlement, and now this. He felt like he was losing his mind. Desperately, he said, "Mom, hit me. Please just hit me. I need to know if this is real." His mother looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "What are you talking about, Zhang? Why would I hit you? Just do it," Zhang shouted, his frustration boiling over. "I need to know if I'm awake or still dreaming." His father stepped forward, concern etched on his face. "Zhang, what's going on? You're scaring us." Zhang's eyes darted around the room, landing on the fruit plate on the nightstand. There was a knife next to it. Without thinking, he grabbed it, and before anyone could stop him, he stabbed himself in the thigh. Blood welled up, but he felt nothing, no pain, no sensation. "See, I'm still dreaming," he screamed, his voice breaking. He stumbled out of bed, the knife still in his hand, and ran for the stairs. As he reached the top, he tripped again, tumbling down and hitting his head on the floor. When he came to again, he was back in his bed, his heart pounding. He looked around, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and fear. Zhang was terrified. Was he awake or was he still dreaming? He lay in bed, the alarm clock beside him blaring. Ring, ring, ring. He glanced at the clock. 6 a.m. Then his dad burst into the room, saying, "Get up, hurry up and get ready for your exam. Don't forget anything." Exam. Zhang's mind raced. This felt wrong. He was supposed to be at a wedding, not taking an exam. His dad looked at him, puzzled. "Haven't you woken up yet? Your college entrance exam starts at 9 a.m. You need to check your admission ticket and stationery." Zhang's scalp tingled. Was this another dream? Could the wedding have been a dream? He felt a growing sense of dread. "Don't have silly," his dad said, urging him to hurry. What's wrong with this kid? Confused and disoriented, Jung grabbed his bag and followed his dad to the bus stop. As they parted ways, his dad reminded him to do well on the exam. Jung numbly boarded the bus heading to the school. When he arrived at the school, Jung followed the other students into the exam hall. The teacher called out, "Show me your admission ticket." Jung frantically searched his bag, but it was nowhere to be found. His dad had told him to bring it, but he couldn't find it anywhere. His empty backpack gaped like a lipless mouth. A voice in his head whispered, "Why am I even looking? Why am I listening to him?" The teacher grew impatient. "What are you doing? You can't enter without your ticket." Jung's heart pounded. He screamed in frustration, everything going black. When he came to, he found himself in a hospital bed, and for drip in his hand, his family watching over him. Jung's lips trembled, his mind consumed by fear. "Am I still dreaming?" he wondered. His mother asked, "Are you okay, Jung? You scared us." Jung couldn't speak. He pinched his arm but felt no pain. Desperate, he pulled out the fur needle and ran to the window, throwing himself out. The feeling of falling, the terror, the despair, it was all too real. Just as he was about to hit the ground, he woke up again. This time he found himself under a table, in the hotel, surrounded by vomit and the stench of alcohol. His friends were passed out around him. His head throbbed, and he felt a mix of relief and dread. The pain in his head meant he was finally awake. Right. He stumbled to the bathroom, desperate to clean up. His headache was unbearable, but at least he could feel it. He grabbed a water jug from the table and took a few sips, hoping to ease his burning throat. As he cleaned up, Jung realized something. He had been trapped in a cycle of nightmares, each one more terrifying than the last. But now he was finally awake. Or was he? The line between reality and dreams was blurred, and he couldn't be sure. Jung's head was pounding as he stumbled back to the restaurant. His eyes fell on a table that hadn't been cleaned yet. There was a ceramic teapot on it. He grabbed it and took a few gulps of water, hoping to ease his burning throat. For a moment, he felt better, but then his stomach churned violently. He ran to the bathroom again and threw up, his body heaving. When he finally made it back to the restaurant, one of his friends had slumped over. Jung tried to pull him up, but the man was heavy and drunk. As he struggled, the friend lurched to one side, pulling Jung down with him. The chair had a protruding metal spike, and it dug into Jung's arm. Blood welled up. He felt nothing. Jung stared at his bleeding arm in horror. He was still dreaming. Desperation set in. He grabbed a fork from the table and stabbed his hand. Blood flowed, but there was no pain. He was trapped, unable to wake up. The room spun around him as the alcohol surged through his system. He threw up again and passed out. When he came to, he was in a hospital bed, and the fourth drip in his arm. His family surrounded him, their faces filled with concern. Jung felt weak, his body limp like a noodle. His head throbbed and he felt nauseous. The room buzzed with noise, but he couldn't focus on anything. All he felt was fear and the lingering headache from the alcohol. "Mom, I need some water," he croaked. "Dad, get the doctor." "Honey, open the window. I need some air." He dismissed his family, needing a moment alone. As soon as they left, he yanked the IV needle out of his arm and stabbed his hand. Pain shot through him. He couldn't believe it. He could finally feel pain. He kept stabbing his hand, the blood pooling around him. When his wife returned, she gasped in horror. Jung looked at her, blood dripping from his hand, and smiled. He felt an overwhelming sense of relief. He was finally awake. He lay back on the bed and drifted off to sleep. When he woke up again, everything seemed normal, but the memory of his nightmare was still fresh in his mind. It was a harrowing experience that he never wanted to relive. From that day on, Jung never touched alcohol again. Why mention the date, May 10, 2009? About a year later, the movie Inception was released. Before that, Jung had no idea such a concept existed. When he heard about the film, he was fascinated, but he never wanted to recall the deep, paralyzing fear he had experienced.